Guys, BRO Premium just finished, and I mean, it was pretty good, right? Pretty good. A lot of expected decks, but at the same time, there's also a lot of unexpected decks. So let's kind of go through all the regions, talk about the top 8, kind of identify, you know, some interesting things, because although the format is overall quite solved, there is some very, very interesting stuff that we can still see here. So let's kind of start off in the AO region, right? We have the eventual winner was Gigas. For WCC, we had Kevin Cho making it to the top 8, but unfortunately he lost there and went to go play NA, and it turned out pretty well for him. So let's kind of look at these decks, right? Let's look at these decks. First off, we have Karan Patel's Shadow Paladin list. Now, you know, Karan, very well known to be playing Shadow Paladin. He won Premium EU with Shadow Paladin, and he decided to take it home here, but he didn't take it home, right? Very sad. He was just playing your very standard Shadow Paladin list. It's a pretty good call, I have to say, in Shadow Paladin. If I was to choose between Prism or Shadow Paladin going into this tournament, I probably would actually pick Shadow Paladin, especially Luard, just because I feel like it's a slightly more powerful pick, outscales Prism. Very important in a format where now everyone knows how to play the Prism deck, so you just need that extra oomph in like less consistency to make up for it. So actually a great pick, and it took him all the way to the top 8, so pretty well. He was actually playing Gigas, who was playing another Shadow Paladin top 8. Gigas eventually won the whole tournament. He had a bit of an unorthodox grade 1 that he ran here, and it was pretty interesting to see him, like, we didn't really see this in action though, but we saw him just like play against the Prism at the end and came out on top. Notice that both of these players ran super consistent grade 1 lineups. They're not playing anything like Apocalypse Bat or anything for the extra multi-attack. They just went super consistent, max out the knees, max out the Brandwin, right? Just so they don't get grade stuck. You know, getting grade stuck in like an 8-round tournament / 9-round tournament, then going to top 8. You can't lose any of those matches, so you don't want to just lose it to grade stuck. And honestly, when you're beating things like, when you're playing things like Prism, you don't really need that extra kind of firepower to win. You just need to make sure you hit grade 3, slowly outscale your opponent and win. The other interesting thing about this deck was running the OG heals, because GG's just, in his interview, said he just doesn't really care about running Heal Guardians. He doesn't really need the damage. If they want a damage denied and they're falling behind, you know, he can just put down cards and still attack. While, you know, the extra 20k shield he is valuing much more than, you know, just being able to guard early. Because if they rush you, you have enough CB to kind of push back and counterattack. So he's got that whole mind, you know, plan already figured out. So this is why he actually decided not to run the Heal Guardians. And look, it seemed to work out pretty well for him. And at least in the AO region, I think there was less Angel Feathers compared to like the other regions too. So, you know, just hope you don't face them, and if you do, just wish for the best, right? Wish for the best. So overall, pretty nice. The Shadow list also deferred. Just GG's run 3 drag drivers, while Karan runs 4, and they traded on the Morpheus slots. I think it's really up to personal preference. I personally like 4 drag drivers, because I don't like putting drag drivers back. I want to delay putting drag drivers back as much as possible. But I also like running 4 Mephesus, because I don't like getting stuck in grade 2. So maybe for me, it'd be like cut one of these cards in the grade 1 slot just to put it there. But, you know, there's a lot of good grade 1s that you might want to run. So it's really down to just personal choice, right? Next we have is Saberi's list. Now, Saberi was the hero of the stream, because he was like the only guy that was undefeated that wasn't playing Prisms. Because we were just like, wow, what should we feature? Bing, 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 boom, bing, all Prism mirrors. Something we probably don't want to see on stream, right? So yeah, we basically featured him a lot. It was very interesting to see him play this list. Navigator really took it home. Navigator Colombard, he said, was his key cards to just beat everything, because, you know, you want a Skull Dragon ASAP, and then after your Skull Dragon, they're either dead or you Skull Dragon again. And nothing can really stop Skull Dragons with a huge drop zone. That's just pretty much it. It's just, they just start eating damage, and they're dead. So as long as like the opponent was able to guard that, like draw their nulls, then, you know, Saberi had issues, but otherwise they usually couldn't. They took it all the way. He took it all the way to top 4, right? All the way to top 4 before finally falling. So yeah, definitely putting Grand Blue back on the table. It's just that when we saw a lot of other Grand Blues, they weren't running Navigator, which was the big minus in their deck. And the Navigator just absolutely worked really fine for Saberi and really just took it to the top. So if you're playing Grand Blue nowadays, you have to run Navigator. This is pretty much it. No questions asked. Put it in, accelerate your drop zone, make your plays, win the game with Skull Dragons, right? That's how you win. That's how you top 4, I guess. We actually saw Amurokumu. Now, if you remember as well, right, I did a V Premium Hot Wheel Not Top list. I did put Amurokumu, so I'm wrong, right? Amurokumu did top. Why did it top? I just don't get it. Why did it top? You know, it's quite unlucky for me. But yeah, he made it to top 8 and faced Saberi and then lost, right? Because, you know, unfortunately, the matchup seems pretty good for Yasue, but if you don't just kill them, you kind of eat 4 Skull Dragons and die, right? That can exactly happen. Pretty interesting list. He's just running the old Yasue list with a few new cards, but the engine is just basically old stuff. You have Heal Guardians now. He's running Heavy Fronts, also running 1 crit because I don't know, maybe to keep his opponent honest. But the biggest problem with this deck now, right, is your Yasue turn can get shut down by 1 Heal Guardian when going first. And that was its biggest play, right? Yasue going first, just curb stomp your opponent before they can set up. Now, Heal Guardian, bam. And the entire turn is kind of weakened / negated, right? So, a bit unfortunate, but he was able to take it all the way to top 8 at least. So, congratulations for 0. Yeah, pretty nice, pretty nice. Then we got some interesting Prism lists. Now, you might be thinking, interesting Prism lists? Are you crazy? Prism lists are boring. But no, we have a Manlong here. He's apparently the OG creator of this Highlander Prism hybrid list. If you look at WGP Hong Kong a couple of months back, I think you would have seen it floating around. Yes, he was the guy piloting that, and again, he piloted in the AO region and made it to actually top 2. Right, this list is actually very interesting, able to abuse Q-Tire just to get extra cards. Its late game seems to be very, very good, right? Because you just can get any card you want. You can keep on getting Ellies and just kind of defensive up for a very, very long time. One weakness in this deck is that they're running a lot of 1 copies of certain important cards, right? Like 1 Lieselot. Normally you want 4 Lieselot, because you know what's a good opener? Lieselot into Lieselot. That's always been good, but you can't really do this in this deck. You can only Lieselot into Aqua into Lieselot. Okay, that's fine. That's not bad, but again, you're not running like 4 Aquas as well, so that possibility of that happening is lowered too. The other one is Spiana. Spiana is a very important card nowadays. When you're playing good players, they will damage deny you. Spiana gets around that. Spiana puts back Heal Guardians. If you're going to time, you can Spiana Heal Guardians back to the deck, and then try and triple drive into them and heal down so you win through sudden death. You can bounce those Heal Guardians as well back up through Prism's Vert's effect. So I feel like Spiana is just like a very, very nice key card, and in our list, we ran Spianas. But overall, this is a very, very interesting list as well. It puts on a new kind of curve to Prisms, right? It makes you actually think a bit, because you actually have to know your ratios and understand, like, you know, what am I searching with Q-Tire? So yeah, I think this is definitely something that people can try if they're getting bored of the OG Prism lists, because Prism really hasn't changed much. This just adds some extra ceiling to it, all right? And probably will help against things like Luad, just a bit more, right? Playing that late game a bit more. Next we got Kevin Cho. So Kevin Cho did pretty well this weekend. In AO, he made it to top 8 and played Manlong and lost. He was just playing pretty much the WCC list, Prism list, which is just running, which is like the old one, but it's now running three Spianas instead of Radica, right? And the Spianas, again, I just said before, very, very good. Stops counter charge, book back Heal Guardians. Kind of when it gets to that grind game and gets the time, you can kind of win through that through just healing down as well. So yeah, Spiana was basically play. Otherwise, the deck is just the same. Just playing the same, doing the same thing, and just, you know, getting a bunch of cards, which is good, right? Which is good. Next, we have Andre. Andre was also playing a Highlander list, but he's kind of playing a Singapore variant of this link that's much more greedy, right? We see him running the Pearl Sisters as well to get that extra push when you just... it's kind of interesting with this list, right? I was thinking, you know, if you're running the Pearl Sisters, you can run like a Lupina as well and just get that high roll going. But he decided to go with Ange, which is... I'm not too sure. Like, I feel like maybe Lupina might be a bit nicer, or just, you know... But I guess Ange is just a great setup card, right? It's just a great setup card. Again, kind of the same weaknesses as the other decks, but it's just very interesting to see, like, this this list coming into fruition, because everyone thought the format was rather solved already, but you know, new innovations come and go, and I think everyone's just trying to stuff Courtier into basically everything that they can try to put in. And the trigger lineup has one more extra crit compared to others, because they can put in like a normal sentinel and just kind of search it out with Courtier, so basically just getting whatever they need, which is very, very nice. So the last list we have here is by Mizza Zonakari. He was running Prism as well, but he's running kind of a weird list. I'm not sure how to put my head around it. He has a few cards that can bottom deck cards, so I'm guessing like when he's playing the grind game or the long game in a Prism Mirror, for example, he can kind of like put stuff back to not deck out. But I think there's like much more effective ways to do it, right? Like this Clan Collection card, Mernil, yeah, puts a normal card back. You know, Steza does it too. Only running 2 Spiana, which does it. And then lastly, we got Finessa, which also does it as well. But you could just run like more Spianas, for example, right? More Spianas is pretty nice. Senders are also pretty good too, right? 2 Senders, I think, is asking to get, I don't know, grade stuck, right? So I feel, and Sender overall is just a good card. It's a 13k booster. So yeah, I don't really agree with running like 2 Sender. It's just too good to pass up, right? So there's a few cards here that I'm a bit like iffy on, but it kind of worked out for him anyway, because he made it to the top 8. So you know, he topped with this list. So he's definitely doing something right. He has a different mindset than me, but you know, I guess I'm biased, right? Because of the WCC Bermuda lists. All right, but yeah, that was the top 8 for AO. Very Prism centric. Surprise, surprise, right? We didn't see any Angel Feathers, which is really interesting. Normally, you know, Angel Feathers should be a pretty popular pick, but instead we saw like Amurokumu and, you know, Grand Blue. Grand Blue to a lesser extent, but Amurokumu was the real shocking one, and the Shadow Paladins. I just want to point out, it's very unfortunate how all the matchups went down. So the top 4 was just like, the top 4 in this bracket was all Prism Mirrors, and then the Shadow Paladins played each other. So the last one was just Saberi playing 0, so it would just be, you know, Grand Blue versus Amurokumu. So the unique decks played each other, while all the multiple decks just played like the same clan. So yeah, it was pretty figured out on how like the bracket will turn out, except for the bottom one. But yeah, that was pretty funny. Anyway, moving on to EU. EU's a bit different. EU, the winner was Pierre from France, which is pretty cool. Tyler from WCC made it from top 8 as well, but that was it. But we saw some Singaporeans. Also, Manlong made it to top 8 as well. So he top 8'd, no, he top 2'd AO, then jumped into EU, and then made it to top 8 at least. So pretty interesting. EU had some very interesting lists, and again, ruined my predictions, which is quite unfortunate. So let's kind of look at the lists, right? So first off, we have Vanquisher. This is by Nuno, right? Nuno was playing Book Vanquisher. We've seen this kind of these lists around, but you know, Nuno, significance. Used to be the standard world champ. Now that standard's become V-Prem, he's technically the V-Prem champ, right? And he's taking apparently his favorite deck, Narukami, all the way to top 8. Where unfortunately he lost, but it's very, very cool to see Nuno in action again. Because you know, we haven't seen these people at Worlds for a very, very long time, So, good job, man. Good job. Nice to see you play again. You know. But next we have the beginning of the, not the weird ones, right? The weird ones. We got I'm sorry, but I'm gonna ruin this name. But we got Tufshintoga playing Link Joker. Now, I actually predicted Link Joker will not top, right? Because I had to cull half the clans. So I had to predict that which half of the clans will not top, and I put Link Joker there. We did see Link Joker results in Japan, but going 8 rounds with Messiah, I think is pretty scary. Right? I think it's pretty scary. You want to open the Volko combo to first turn Volko out. You want to like flip a Burst Monk. Flip a grade 3 off a Burst Monk and just restand and just auto win, right? I've heard stories where a lot of like my friends were playing and they'll play Link Joker and they flip the grade 3 and like get wrecked. So I think that's basically the story of the day. But I think like honestly, if you think about the format in a big nutshell, right? How are you beating these Prisms, right? Because Prism, although is the most consistent deck out there, it is also not the strongest, right? If you want a stronger deck, you have something like Luard or Melody, but they sacrifice consistency. But there's a reason why they do that, because you don't want to sit in a Prism mirror with another player just trying to triple drive and flip yellows, right? Because that kind of takes away a lot of agency in the game. So how do you be good players, right? Especially, we're talking about a metagame that hasn't changed in a year, because so everyone's skill level should be rising to the point where they kind of know the plays of their deck. So how do you beat them? What's the next edge you take? You take high roll decks, right? Take high roll decks, you take decks that people can't outskill you, which is when a Messiah does its stuff, you can't really outskill it, right? Of course, you'll get bad games where Messiah just doesn't do anything, but if you just pop off, right, even the best players will lose. That's just reality, and that's pretty much Messiah, in my opinion, going into BRO. And I mean, they managed to survive the 8-round gauntlet, and when you do, right, it pays off, right? It pays off, and it's nice that, like, even going through the gauntlet, you can go X1 and X2. I know EU had like no undefeateds. So there were quite a few X2 slots that people could make it in. I'm not too sure who made it. I know, all I know is Tyler was the 8th place spot. So yeah, you can maybe like drop one game, you can drop 2 games, but you just don't want to drop any games in the final bracket. And I think to have made it to top 4, which is a very good achievement, and you know, just playing Messiah. So yeah, definitely, if you guys want to link Joker deck, Messiah is the way to go. There are actually 2 different builds of Messiah that we'll see very, very soon. But this one ran kind of like a heavier grade. I don't know. I have to look at the one. But this one ran a kind of a heavier grade 3 count. If we look at it, it's 6 grade 3s here. The order is 3 more, so that's 9, and then he's running 4 heal guardians, which is 13. So the chance of a burst monk hitting is decently high. I want to say because you look at his burst monk count, it is at 4. So he's definitely going all the way, right? He's definitely going all the way. So yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Anyway, let's move on to the next list. We have is the other Messiah list, and this one decided not to run the order instead. So his hit rate with Burst Monk would be slightly lower, but again, you don't really have to always go for the Burst Monk high roll, right? He has 10 targets in the deck. It's not bad, but Burst Monk overall also is just a straight +1, right? It's just a +1. It's nice. It's decent enough. You can kind of play like a normal Messiah game, but kind of hit off quickly with a Volko as early as possible. That can kind of carry games too. So it's just kind of interesting to see this one went lower on the high roll than before. But he also made it to top 4, which is pretty nice. It's pretty nice. So yeah, this one was piloted by Ryan, I think. Ryan. So he did a very good job. Did a very good job. And I mean, 2 Link Jokers in EU, right? Can you expect that? Like, you might think one makes it, but 2 really? It's pretty crazy, man. It's pretty crazy. Moving on to the next deck, we have Brian's list. This came second, and it was playing Melody. This is the only Melody top in all the regions. But I have to say, I'm really triggered by this list. I feel like the Melody deck now, right, is literally solved. Right, it is literally solved. There are only like less good picks for your deck, and definitely, unless this is a waifu deck, right? If this is a Serena waifu deck, I can understand why he puts like, you know, 1 grade 3 Serena in and 2 grade 2 Serenas. But these are definitely not optimal picks, right? There's some cards here that is insanely more optimal and that you'd want, and that is maxing out Fina, right? You really need the Fina, because otherwise, if just 2 Fina, at best you're intercepting for 20k. At worst, you're intercepting for nothing because 1 goes to damage, or you don't see it, and your entire defensive plan just becomes really, really bad. Right, so overall, like, even if you wanted to keep like a blue Serena, you can cut a Caro for the Fina. But otherwise, if it's me, I just cut the blue girl at all. Just you know, don't run it and just max Finas. Probably max cannons, because if you don't see a cannon as well, your deck kind of just doesn't work. And we've seen like low Caro counts, because if you actually when you play the deck, the Caro just isn't that required, right? It's nice to have, it's not that required. You can still put like a Seer behind some important card and it'll still do work. But yeah, and also just like, you know, running 2 of this Serena here. Okay, you can have the idea that you want to play like the early game a bit harder, because, you know, she can regenerate cards back into your hand when she hits. But, you know, surviving is also quite important too, and that's why we see a lot of people like running 3 Fina or something like that. I know some people also like playing Liza lots, just so they can, you know, call a value card and kind of push like that. But overall, it's just that the Serena, the extra card from it, I just don't really think it's that good. But what am I to say, right? What am I to say? He made it all the way to top 2, so he was definitely doing something right. Why Melody is good? I would have played Melody if I had the chance to. Unfortunately, I didn't have the Heal Guardians for it and the Draw Nulls, right? But Melody would definitely. I like Melody just because you can just power through your opponent's board and not care. And against the Prism matchup, it's actually quite favorable because going second as well into the Prism matchup, the Prism doesn't get a double restand or a double call. The Melody actually gets the Excel Circle, which is vitally important because Prism doesn't have any retire. And then you have 3 bulky intercepts at the front row that pretty much negates 3 attacks. They either have to attack into them, or you can choose to intercept and just get a value intercepts, which is why Feena is so important, because the more Feenas in Soul, the more value those intercepts become. The other good matchup is the Angel Feather matchup, and I think EU had quite a few Angel Feathers. But yeah, once you ride up to grade 3, pop down Feenas, the game is sealed. The game is basically over. Put another Excel, and yeah, they're done. When you think about like how the deck works, once you get the multiple XLs at the front, they're basically giant walls that your opponent has to get through, and unless it's something better like a Luar deck with Apocalypse Bats, that can really punch through. But stuff that doesn't retire, then they're in bad territory. That's why you see like Spectral Dukes and all that run the Force Intercept, so then they like Melody just loses all their intercepts on one turn and then just eats a bunch of damage and dies, right? So yeah, pretty cool. I would have taken Melody if I had the chance. Also, like Narukami B2, right? Narukami B2 because they just bind your front row and you can't intercept, right? I know like Messiahs as well. They can usually bind your stuff, but in all the new builds on Messiahs remove their removal cards, so you can kind of sit there and just, you know, tank attacks and feel great, right? Feel great. So yeah, Melody should have. I think Melody should have been a better pick. I think more people probably should have taken it. I just think a lot of people didn't understand how good the player base has become and how boring Prism Mirrors are. Well, they probably knew how boring Prism Mirrors are, but just like the amount of players going in and how lack of, you know, just you don't have really much agency when playing the Prism Mirror. So just less room for outplays nowadays, and something like bringing a powerhouse like Melody as well or Luard would have really helped. But yeah, at least he did a very, very good job. So congratulations. Next we have is a deck list from Mervyn, right? I think we've seen that name quite a lot. But yeah, he took a Highlander, the Highlander Prism build as well. And yeah, he made it to top X. He made it to top cut, so pretty nice. I think his one ran 1 tier. I'm not sure if the other ones really ran that many tiers. But yeah, I think this one is kind of the unique card out of them. He also ran the Pearl Sisters, right? The Greed, right? The Greed Sisters, you know. So it seems pretty good. Good job, man. And then we have Manlong again. We've seen this list already. But yeah, he kind of just top 8 two regions with Highlander Prism. So good stuff. And then here we have the winner of EU. We have Eold Sora playing, or Pierre, sorry, that was the deck name. Pierre playing Shadow Paladin, and it's quite good. This list actually has a pretty good matchup against Melody. You think of what it can do. He also has the congratulations one, right? Yeah, in the Melody matchup, let's say they set up an Excel Circle and they have 3 bulky intercepts there. Dragheart retires 1. You have at least 4 attacks, right? With just Morfessa. He runs Bat, so you can get even more attacks. So yeah, Melody just can't block that many attacks, and you just win through sheer power, right? Sheer power. He actually has multiple attacks, so you can even go Rooter if he wants to go. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. It gets to a point where, like, you know, Melody has 1 Excel, you can punch through that. When Melody gets 2 Excels, it's starting to run out of resources. So at that point, you're still scaling really high and beating them anyway. And surprise, you know, Luard can actually generate cards into their hand, get quite a decent amount of advantage. But the key thing is they can draw into the nulls better than probably a lot of other decks can, because he just has a strong draw power. So at some point, he's going to just be able to get a bunch of cards and then like block the big attacks and then take some of the other attacks, etc. So I think like Luard actually a great pick and going to the finals, I think it really kind of showed off how good it is, right? So yeah, good job, Pierre. And then lastly, we have Tyler's list. Tyler was just running the Uzume's Angel Feather list. I also actually ran the Uzume Angel Feather list as well. Personally, I am actually not a huge fan of the Uzume list because the Hamiels that come out from this deck are quite weak, right? You know, when you think of like Hamiel one-shot from before, you think of crits, huge damage, big power lines, people just dying, getting one-shot. With this one, it feels like the Hamiel is just there because it has Sentinel Restrict, but you're basically trying to flip yellows and you're just trying to use it as extra drive checks. And if you hit a lot of yellows, that's fine. If you don't, then okay, sure, Hamiel still hits with a crit and guard restrict, but it doesn't hit big enough, and that is a huge problem because you're gonna play against a Prism and they're gonna outgrind you, and you're just gonna feel really bad. But that's life, right? So we're gonna see I think what is a better Angel Feather list very soon. But that is EU. Shadows actually won this, so it's pretty nice. Shadows actually won AO and EU, so you know, Shadow Supremacy, right? But yeah, we're moving on to NA now. NA, instead of Shadow Supremacy, we have WCC Supremacy, which was pretty good to watch in the morning and waking up and seeing everyone do well. Here we can look, Kevin Cho actually won it, so you know, top 8'd AO, did the run back in the top 8 bracket for NA, actually just beating a bunch of WCC members right here. He started with Tyler, he ended him, then he ended Steven in the top 4, then he faced his buddy Toby here and destroyed him as well just to get those Chrono Jets. So yeah, very good showing from all the WCC players, to be honest. I'm not going to kind of bore you with what they were playing, because guess what? They were playing the same list. Well, you've probably seen Kevin's list. He played the same deck in AO, so again, the 3 Spianas. Toby, still the same thing, running the Spianas. And then Tyler running pretty much the exact same thing. Actually, just the exact same thing as Toby. So even the starter is the same. So yeah, the one I want to kind of focus on is Steven's list. This one is running 2 of this Care Mine Nurse. Now, you might have seen this card from a while ago, right? In the earlier builds of one-shot Hamiel from like the BSFO age, this card was actually ran because it's just a good booster, 29k, 16 crit. What do you want, right? You win game. Nowadays, the latest list from the WGP actually cut this and just maxed out a bunch of other cards and was running 4 Cyril. Now, if you actually play this deck, you'll find that Cyril you use Cyril like once per game, and then you probably don't really want to use it because you have soul issues. You actually have soul issues with the deck. That's why you run a Belly Meds Angel as well. So cutting the Cyril down to 3 is perfectly fine because you'd find that it doesn't get used. You discard with it, right? You see a Zophiel, right, and you see a Cyril, you're discarding the Cyril, right? You see a Nakia comes into play, you're discarding the Cyril. The Cyril is just, it's pretty much fodder, right? It's just pretty much fodder. So cutting this down to 1 kind of solves your like soul issues, and then also that means you don't need the belly meds, and there you can fit in 2 of these Care Miners, and that also solves the other problem of this deck, which is Hamiel, being very guardable, right? That's because you're boosting it with an 8k, at best you're boosting it with a 13k, which is Nakia, but pump that up with a 29k, things become slightly different, right? Things become slightly different. More cards need to be thrown down. More cards, you'd reach thresholds where your opponent can't deal with it. So yeah, I think this Care Miner is just absolutely required. This is pretty much the best Angel Feather list right now. And don't forget, she gets 20k if you have 5 cards. Very easy to get with Jophiel. And also, if you don't want to boost with it, it's still 29k. Right? It's just insane. So it's actually 39, including Gabriel's skill. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of Steven's list. I think this is the reason why Steven just did very, very well. He's able to overpower other Angel Feathers as well, just because his power lines are better. And just cutting down the fat, which is the 4th Cyril, for just a better card in general. Right? Just a better card. People say, okay, you run heals now, so you might heal out of your 29k. Well, just who cares, right? If it happens, it happens. But you can just kind of accelerate yourself to 5 damage anyway, and still do this stuff. So overall, I think this is just the best Angel Feather list, and I'm just gonna change my list to this list. So Good job, Steven. Congrats on coming in 3rd place. Now, for the ruiners of my predictions, we have Kagsie here. It was the hero of the stream just because he was not playing Prism. He was actually playing Maelstrom. And yeah. What can we say, right? What can we say? Maelstrom doing Maelstrom things still. There was an age where people underestimated Glory Maelstrom. It was a rogue pick, but it did produce results. That time slowly disappeared. It was like in 2018 or so, right? But, you know, you can't underestimate Maelstrom too much because suddenly it comes back. You're like, what did it do again? Oh, I can't guard with more than one card. Yeah, GG's, and it has some of that old support that, like, you know, gives extra drive check. It's a surprise, but you know, it took it. It actually went undefeated in Swiss, so it definitely did a pretty decent job. So yeah, that's a surprise. This is a surprise and a half, to be fair, right? So good job for Kagsie. Next we have Nahat. I'm gonna run this name too. Nahat Dang, right? Toku set it perfectly on stream. Running the Luad list with the Apocalypse Bat. Again, just very strong. He has like 3 brand wins, 3 knees, right? I would want to like kind of max those kind of out, maybe like replace the Swills for like another brand win or knees, right? Just so I can like stay confident that I'm kind of consistent, right? So. And that might be a change for me, but he was happy with the 3-3 split and just able to just put an Apocalypse Bat just for the high roll. So yeah, pretty nice. And then we had Adrian Barber, who was also playing another Luad list as well. This one went full consistency, and I think it's just full consistency is correct. I feel like it's still the best way, just because NA was 9 rounds. Think about 9 rounds then plus top 8. That is 12 rounds. You can't lose any games, right? Especially after like the 9th round, you can't lose any games. You just don't want to lose to a Grey Suck. That is exactly this is what a lot of the Luad players picked. And I guess like there was Pierre that took a bit of a more aggressive one. The one that we said just then had Apocalypse, but the rest was also playing very conservative too. So yeah, I do like the Batless build. And then lastly, we have the Night Rose. We have Ichi with the Night Rose. And Night Rose once again showing that it's doing very well in the format. Well, not like it's not like dominating well, but just pretty good, right? Pretty good. Saberi did it, and Ichi here did it as well, top 8ing with a Grand Blue list. Again, we see the Navigator, and this is definitely the thing that is bringing Grand Blue. You have new toys, but the old style still works perfectly. So just use it, right? Just use it. Navigator, Columbard, Skull Dragons, bam, boom, they're dead, right? So overall, I think Grand Blue actually probably, or Navigator Grand Blue probably overperformed in this meta, right? Just I think a lot of people again underestimated it. I think Grand Blue did win AO like last region, but people like it's definitely Prism, it's definitely Luad, it's definitely this, but Grand Blue, it's pretty good a while ago, but nowadays I think it's been outclassed. But Skull Dragons come back and say no. Right, we're still a good deck. So yeah, that is kind of the entire BRO meta, right? And my thoughts on the meta at the moment. For me, what did I do? Right, I took Uzume Angel Feather to EU. I had to lose the first game. I played against Prism the second game, lost, so I just dropped and went to sleep. And then in NA, I went I think 3-2. Right, I won the first 3 rounds and I lost the last 2. The 4th game, I think I was 5k short from guarding and I had to G-assist. But that was purely to me guarding pretty badly. So I think that was definitely my loss. The second game, I just played against the Gold Paladin who went first, and I had to G-assist. So that's just an auto lose, straight up auto lose. So it feels bad, but that is life. That is how it is. Let's kind of compare this to my predictions, I guess. This is a video from a while ago. We can post a link to it in the description or in a card. Yeah, so this was overall, these clans were not top V premium. Unfortunately, I was wrong. Aquaforce made it. Amurokumu made it. Link Joker made it, right? It wasn't a rogue Link Joker. 2 Link Jokers made it, so feel sad. Look at this smug face right here. This is me feeling happy. But unfortunately, that will become a frown. That is a frown. Because, yeah, that's how it is, right? Unfortunately, I did have to choose certain clans that did have a decent chance at making it, because, you know, if I'm cutting 12, then, you know, this I might be wrong, right? I might be wrong. I have to start cutting good clans. clans that I probably should have cut is maybe Pale Moon, because it's just not that great. I was fearing Nightmare Dolls, but just it looks like no one brought it. Gear Chronicle didn't make it, though I still think Gear Chronicle is a good deck. So maybe I should have picked that. Genesis surprisingly had no tops. I was thinking like a Rogue Astral Poet, or a Rogue I don't know, like Regalia something would have made it, but they didn't. Or maybe I should have said Kagura, because who would take Kagura now when they have Angel Feather? So yeah, those are some like 2020 hindsight kind of picks, but yeah, like I'm missing Link Jerk and Amurokumu and Aquaforce got me. Bad times. Yeah, so I didn't. By the way, I also didn't choose. I wouldn't have picked Dark Irregulars because Dark Irregulars can randomly hire on the moon. So I didn't want to pick that. So yeah, but probably should have. All right, that is it for the video, guys. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think of the V Premium inside of BRO. Does anything need to change for it? We will be posting another wrap up as well with the WCC boys, right? Soonish, next video, pretty much. So go check that one out, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. All right, bye.